Having recently played through Pokemon Emerald Sea Glass, I had an immense desire to go back to the original Gen 2 games, but I can't play games normally anymore, so I needed a gimmick. Since I'm already infatuated with Kanto Pokemon, I've decided to lean into that unhealthy obsession and attempt a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Crystal using only Kanto Pokemon. Sorry, best Johto Pokemon by far, you don't get to be here. Let's see how it goes. It doesn't actually matter who I get as a starter since I can't use them anyway. No, my real starter ends up being a level 2 Pidgey. On Route 46, I make sure it's daytime to decrease my chances of getting a Rattata, and it worked! Welcome to the team, Geodude. Next is Caterpie on Route 30. I'd love a Poliwag on Route 31, so I make it night and get a Bellsprout instead. He's not going to be helpful for the first gym at all. I get Zubat in the Dark Cave, and in the Sprout Tower, the encounter is Ghastly. I knew there were plenty of Kanto Pokemon in Johto, but I didn't realize there were quite this many. Unfortunately, by the time I get through that tower, both Ghastly and Pidgey are overleveled. I didn't realize that Falkner's Pidgeotto was only at level 9. That's ridiculously low, but somehow still also cheating. How does that work? I'm not really a Bellsprout fan, so at the first opportunity to ditch him for an Onix, I do it without hesitation. Trading a Kanto for a Kanto is okay in my book. This Rock Snake isn't great either, but he might be useful against Falkner. If only he or Geodude actually learned a rock move by level 9, this would be simple. Against Falkner, I start with Metapod because his Pidgey does not know any flying moves. Thanks to a berry, my pod comes out victorious. He survives just long enough to string shot Pidgeotto a single time before being sacrificed. With that speed drop, Onix is now faster and hits a Screech. Even though Mudshot is super effective, the concerning aspect of that move is not the pathetic damage it does, it's the accuracy drop. So every turn here counts. After hitting a second Screech, it's time to start tackling. All he needs is 3 hits to connect. He misses, a lot, heals with a berry, but does end up winning, killing that bird with countless missed stones. I expect Falkner to be one of the more difficult gym leaders this run, just because his level cap is so freaking low. With that victory, my dead Metapod evolves. It's the least I can do for him before dropping him into the box, never to be seen again. By the way, I did cheat to change Onix's nickname because Rocky was Rockdonkulus. On Route 36, the only viable Kanto encounter is a Growlithe, who would be a big help against Bugsy. After several Pidgeys I find one, who scares Onix so bad he runs away in terror. Now that would be quite the sight. Several encounters later, like this Slowpoke in the aptly named well, I chase off a pathetic Rocket and am ready to fight Bugsy. But it's not really challenging, as Pidgey manages to gust through his 3 Pokemon, barely breaking a sweat. Wait, do birds even sweat? I don't think so. Which makes that saying even more appropriate. Anyway, that bug is squashed. As I'm leaving this little town, we have our first official battle against Silver. The first one didn't count due to my lack of Kanto Mons. Zubat defeats his Ghastly with a couple of bites, and does basically nothing to his own bat. Rattata can come out to Hyper Fang though. He tail whips Croconaw a few times, and pivots to Pidgeotto. With that defense drop, 2 Gusts knocks out the Croc. Which, unfortunately, brings us to the worst part of Johto, Whitney. Most of my Pokemon are guys too, so that makes it even worse. Onix screeches and Rock throws Clefairy, who metronomes a Horn Drill. That would have been very unfortunate. On Miltank, I pivot to Ghastly, expecting a Stomp, but it's Rollout instead. That is also unfortunate. I had hoped to curse this cow and keep Ghastly alive, but it seems like that's no longer possible. It's time for a Hail Mary Hypnosis, and it hits. Hallelujah. After healing with a berry, Ghastly has just enough HP to survive a curse as the demon cow slumbers. She does wake up and attract Onix after a swap, but at that point it's all over. Screech, Rock Throw, and Curse knock her out. With Whitney and her rolling cow behind me, obviously, it wouldn't be a proper Johto run without a bug catching contest. And believe it or not, the only Pokemon you can get here are all Cantonian. Once my repel wears off, I find a Pinsir. Well, that's pretty great. He then proceeds to break out of 10 Park Balls, meaning I have to damage him and lose some points. I do end up catching him, but only win 3rd place thanks to his lack of HP. It wasn't my fault he refused to be caught. In the Burn Down Tower, Silver pops up again for a rematch. But this time, Geodude has a ground move, and Levitate is not yet a thing for ghosts. Between Absorb and Poison damage, Gloom easily defeats Croconaw. Magnemite is also magnituded, and Zubat is Rock Thrown for the win. That was a simple victory. and not at all deserving of me falling into a hole. Lame. I crawl my way back out, only for Zubat to be mean-looked by a gym trainer's Haunter and then die to Nightshade. I was just trying to level her up to evolve. She didn't deserve that death. Now we have two. On to the actual Ghost Leader. Arbok is more than strong enough to bite through his first two Pokemon. Gengar puts him to sleep, so I pivot to Graveler on a Dream Eater. Gengar and the Haunter after him are both magnituded, and that's the end of that. Jumping ahead to Chuck, he tries to intimidate me by chucking a rock, but where did that rock even go? To start, I use Haunter against his Primeape. That monkey doesn't have any moves that can hit a ghost, so I'm in the clear. Poliwrath starts with a Mind Reader and then puts me to sleep, but he gets paralyzed in the process. After a Surf, I pivot to Pinsir to double strength for the knockout. This brings us to Jasmine. Graveler easily magnitudes Magnemite again. This brings out Steelix, who Iron Tails Tentacruel, but is drowned in a few Surfs after some healing. Graveler once again takes out the other Magnet, winning yet another badge. Before facing the Iceman, I've been avoiding fishing up any Magikarp because I want the shiny red Gyarados. Countless missed Pokeballs later, almost my entire team is at risk of dying here, so this Gyarados was not meant to be. I can easily get another one in almost any body of water, but he won't be shiny, so that's lame. On to Price. Magnemite could have evolved by now, but for some reason I thought he would learn Thunderbolt if kept unevolved for a while. That ends up to not be the case. Regardless, I take out Seal easily enough. Piloswine doesn't have any ground moves, so it's safe to swap into Tentacruel, who is smacked around with a 5-hit Fury attack twice. That's mighty unfair, but he survives it and defeats the pig. The unevolved Magnemite can then make a return to Thunder Wave and Thunder Shock Dewgong. It's disappointing that the strongest electric move I have at this point in the game is only 40 base power, but there's nothing I can do. Before facing my rival, I learned that Magnemite does not learn Thunderbolt, so I might as well evolve him. Golbat survives the hit, wouldn't have if it were a Bolt, and since Magneton is paralyzed, I swap to Tauros to take it out. Graveler comes out to magnitude his Magnet, and then mine makes a return to slowly, but surely, shock for Alligator. The only thing his Haunter can do to Tauros is Curse, which he does, but then dies. Last, Tentacruel easily surfs his Sneasel, beating my rival again. At this point, I absolutely destroy this unnamed Rocket executive, ruining his plans of bringing Giovanni out of retirement. Let that guy rest already. He needs a break after losing to some random kid. This brings us to the final gym leader, Claire. Jinx can easily take out her Dragonairs with Ice Punches, but Kingdra is another matter. Magneton is hit by Dragon Breath on the swap, baiting out Surf for the non-shiny Gyarados. He returns Kingdra to death after surviving a Hyper Beam. Magneton takes a Thunderbolt, allowing Jinx to make a return to Ice Punch the last two Dragonairs. One questionnaire later, I officially earn the final Johto badge, as well as an Extreme Speed Dratini. With that, we can take our first steps into Kanto on the way to the Elite Four. Silver blocks my path one more time, so that's fun. I start with my newly evolved Machamp. I'm allowing trade evolutions here, and he one-shots Sneasel. Magneton once again Thunder Shocks Golbat. His own Magneton is, again, magnituded, and this time Gyarados weakens Feraligatr a bit before swapping to my Magneton to Thunder Shock. Haunter is surfed by Tentacruel after being Thunder Waved. Finally, the newly obtained Dragonair uses her extreme speed to one-shot Kadabra. Now, as much as I would love to have that dragon on my Elite Four team, it won't evolve for quite some time, so into the box she goes. My team is pretty well stacked without her. To compensate for his lack of Thunderbolt, Magneton starts with a Rain Dance, removing the possibility of Thunder missing. Of course, Executor is too bulky and requires a Jinx Ice Punch. My Jinx proves superior to Will's, and Gyarados supersedes Slowbro after some non-PG language. At this point, the rain has run out, and Magneton can't hit more than once, so after a shock, Jinx finishes the battle with an Ice Punch. Koga will be a lot simpler, thanks to Gengar being able to learn Fire Punch via TM. With Charcoal, he punches his way through Koga's first 3 Pokemon, only swapping to Golem to Earthquake Muck. Since he's already out, he also Rock Throws Crobat. That was way simple. Bruno's Hitmontop is countered by Gyarados because he resists fighting, and Dig doesn't work. 2 returns knocks him out, bringing out Hitmonchan. Though his Thunder Punch wouldn't be too bad, I pivot to Golem, who easily tanks a few Ice Punches and Earthquakes. Hitmonlee tries to double kick, but that doesn't work on Ghosts. His Elemental Punches are much more powerful than Chan's. Gyarados surfs the Onix, and together Machamp and Gengar take out Bruno's Machamp. I considered using Curse at one point, but with Fire Punch, it wasn't really necessary. For Karen, Machamp is sand attacked by Umbreon, but still defeats it in 2 hits. He and Vileplume both miss a few times, but Gengar can once again Fire Punch for the knockout. He mixes it up on Murkrow with a Thunder Punch. Gyarados is roared after a swap, and then gets burned when he comes back out. I've swapped to Machamp to tank a Crunch, baiting out Flamethrower for Golem. 1 Earthquake takes out the fully healed dog. Now, he could easily do the same thing to Gengar, but I don't want to be Destiny bonded. So he Rock Throws instead, and then Jinx, who outspeeds the Ghost, waits out the bond with Lovely Kiss, and then licks him to death. Our final league battle is none other than Lance, the cousin of sore loser Claire. He thinks his dragon and dragon-adjacent Pokemon are strong, but Gengar's punches are even better. Gyarados and Dos Dragonites are elementally punched. Golem Rock throws Aerodactyl, and expecting an Outrage from the final Dragonite, I swap to Magneton to Thunder Wave. With that Outrage blocked, Gyarados avoids a Fire Blast and whittles away at that dragon with returns. He does it while taking no damage, allowing him to easily surf Charizard as well. And that's it! I have officially beaten a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokémon Crystal using only Kanto Pokemon. Or have I? Technically, there are 8 more badges to get, but there's nothing novel about beating Kanto with Kanto Pokemon. It's expected. So, to make this more interesting, I now decide to take my journey to Kanto, but catching only new Johto Pokemon in that region, and using them to get the 8 Kanto badges. 1 quick boat ride later, I arrive in Vermilion City. Before challenging any gyms, I search the entire Kanto region for the invasive Johto Pokemon, like Houndour, Chinchou, Quagsire, Slugma, and several others I don't like enough to show. In the end, I capture 13 Johto Pokemon, and unless I'm mistaken, those are the only ones you can catch specifically in Kanto. So let's start getting even more badges, beginning with Janine, whose ace is lower than even Claire's ace was. That doesn't make a ton of sense. Lantern sparks Crobat, and Houndoom flamethrowers Ariados. In case they decide to explode, both Weezing are surfed by Corsola, who has leftovers to try and stay healthy. She is toxic, but does manage to survive an explosion because in this generation, after defeating a Pokemon, poison damage is not applied. Leftovers still works though. I don't know why, that's just how it is. Regardless, that mini glitch saved Corsola's life as Houndoom finishes off the first Kanto gym leader. For Erica, I choose to not complicate things more than necessary, and Houndoom just flamethrowers through her whole team while being underleveled a good amount. This gets me the Giga Drain TM, allowing Sunflora to then blow through Brock's team, getting 1 KO every turn, and healing any of the damage his Pokemon do. From this point on, I do the battles in order of increasing level cap, as is typical. I just really wanted that Giga Drain TM. The only concern with Surge are his Electrodes exploding. Quagsire is not as damp in this generation after all, he's bone dry. So to fend off these kamikaze balls, he has Protect. Not that it was necessary, as he also solos this gym. Unfortunately, our days of just bodying these leaders ends since Misty has her own dry Quagsire. This means I need to use both Jumpluff and Lantern to defeat Misty. By the way, I do have access to the Thunderbolt move tutor now, so Lantern is more powerful than Magneton ever was. But being Steel type is still pretty sick. Houndoom is 4 levels away from learning Crunch, but even with Bite, he easily takes out Sabrina's Psychics in spite of all of her healing. Blaine's fire Pokemon are all either surfed by Quagsire or Earthquaked. And just like that, we're already at the final Kanto gym. Not to jinx anything here, because she's in the box, but I was really surprised how easily I blew through all those gym leaders. I barely even needed a strategy, they were so simple. Let's see how Blue stacks up. Lantern easily Thunderbolts Pidgeot, allowing Houndoom to flamethrower Executor, who tries to Solar Beam. Quagsire takes Earthquake from Rhydon and then surfs. Alakazam tries to Psychic Houndoom, but to no avail. He does now know Crunch, by the way. Gyarados Rain Dances and Hydro Pumps Lantern, but it does so little compared to his own Thunderbolt. Finally, I try to give Corsola the glory of defeating Blue, but Arcanine roars her away, and Houndoom's Crunch is not as great against another Fire Dog. But after some healing and swapping, Corsola comes back out to surf a few more times for the win. And now I have beaten this hardcore Nuzlocke. Or have I? I can't go through all this trouble getting 18 badges and leave Red all alone at the top of Mount Silver. He'll get lonely. While I now have both Kanto and Johto Pokemon to choose from, since Mount Silver is technically back in Johto, I will return to using my Kanto Pokemon with some slight changes. Not Golem though, he's still around to Earthquake Pikachu and Espeon. The evolution survives, but falls to the now thunderbolting Magneton. For Venusaur, the fully evolved Dragonite gets a crit wing attack to one-shot. That worked out well. Magneton thunderbolts Blastoise. Snorlax apparently went on a diet and survives the first low kick by Machamp, but not the second. Finally, Dragonite surfs Red's Charizard and finishes the battle and the run with her unique extreme speed. And now it is over. But for real this time. Let me know in the comments what other region I should try using Pokemon not native to that area. It was pretty fun to mix it up like this. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next region.